Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Senate Education, Tuesday, April 9th. We are going to kick the day off. H 871, an act related to the development of appropriated state aid to school construction. That and miscellaneous ed, as well as a couple of other things, including our big conversation tomorrow. I believe Morgan has Agency of Education coming in to talk to us about budget. Will make up a lot of our week. I know there are some other issues as well. But Mr. Lafayette, thanks for joining. Really appreciate you being here. And you're going to say a few words about 871. So the floor is yours.
Amazing. Awesome. Well, thank you guys very much for having me. I'm Eric Lafayette, born and raised in Vermont, went to BHS, graduating in 06, went to Roger Williams University in Rhode Island, majoring in construction management, graduated back in 2010. Came back to the state to be with family, really, and now live in South Burlington with my wife and 2 kids.
So I have to stop you for a second because this is the education major. So they have a construction management major down there. Was that a good experience for you?
Phenomenal.
Was it? Okay.
Yes. So construction management is a big growing program actually around the state. Norwich has a construction management program. And actually, we're hiring a tech center kid out of Springfield this summer who's going to be interning with us, and he's going to the Norwich Tech Center construction management program.
I'm glad. Thank you for telling us that Norwich has one. That's great to know.
They do. They're the only one in the state that has them, but Wentworth is very popular. Southern New Hampshire University, they have a program. Roger Williams, Northeastern. It's definitely a growing program around the state. So
great. Thank you.
Why I'm here in regards to 871 school construction aid, really advocating on behalf of performance contracting and its ability to address infrastructure and problems around the state. And I really just wanted to kind of inform you guys on what performance contracting is and really the value add that it brings to schools in the state. And then kind of discussing with you guys some of the delivery methods of how construction works in the state of Vermont with schools. So typically right now you see mostly plan and spec or construction manager or an architect leads the project planning process. This is very similar to the Rhode Island model that's currently being put forth right now in Acts or that they're proposing in 871. And I just kind of wanted to talk about some of the advantages that performance contracting can bring to the state. Who is EEI? So that's who I'm with. I'm a project developer with them. We're an energy service company, and we provide turnkey energy services typically through performance contracting. We have an office here in Williston, Vermont. We focus on the MUSH market, which is municipalities, universities, schools, and hospitals. And we are looking at energy efficiency, sustainability, and trying to implement renewable energies into most of those public sectors that I just discussed. We're currently working with Springfield School District in Vermont. We just got done a project at Hannaford Career Center. We're working with Burlington School District, Two Rivers Supervisory Union, White River, Orleans. We're kind of spread throughout the state. We've had success stories at Addison Northwest, at Virgins.
What's that a picture of?
And that is Integrated Arts Academy.
Okay, good.
So that's a geothermal drill rig that is putting down a geothermal well. That's the start. That's a test well at Integrated Arts Academy. We just set up about a week ago. And we're drilling there now. We're about to put 40 wells into the ground.
That's one of my schools in the old north end of Burlington.
It is, yeah. And it's a school that is right around the turn of the century. So it was built around 1900. It had an addition off the back of it that's right around 1960. It's about 55,000 square feet. One of the last schools in the district that really hasn't seen, one of the major upgrades that a lot of the other elementary schools have already had. Why performance contracting? So what we do for performance contracting is we help schools secure grants and financing. So we're looking at the Inflation Reduction Act, which is paying upwards of 30 to 40% of a geothermal project going back to the schools. So that's something that we're applying for the Integrated Arts Academy. What we're really looking for are reducing energy costs, reducing your utility bills, reducing your guys' building operations. So if you guys have systems that have a lot of maintenance, that require a lot of service, those are areas that we want to target and look at putting new, more efficient systems in place. We provide ongoing data analytics. So part of performance contracting is guaranteed savings. In order to guarantee those savings, we work with the customer really on a quarterly basis to optimize their building performance. And that's through the building management system. So making sure that we have the right schedules, night setbacks, occupancy schedules put into place to make sure we're not ventilating the building when it's not in use. And then when there's snow days, we go in there and make sure that we're setting temperatures back and we're not ventilating the building if there's nobody in there. We work a lot with Efficiency Vermont. So Efficiency Vermont, a lot of times will pinpoint schools or municipalities or specific buildings that are really outliers in their energy use. And then we target for performance or energy upgrades. All of our work that we do in performance contracting is at no cost to the school up front. So we do our energy audits and our reviews, our capital analysis at no cost. And then really we present it to the school. If they want to move forward with one of these energy projects, then we work on a cost plus fee basis, very similar, like an open book pricing structure. If they go, hey, we don't want to do any of these, they can say, thank you guys very much, use our capital plan and work with somebody else moving forward. We believe that if we show people the information and we give them the deficiencies as well as the advantages of what these projects will bring, a lot of times these projects sell themselves. And then we do the turnkey operation with guaranteed results. And I really believe that it is the best way to address infrastructure for schools around the state. So really looking specifically at heating systems, building envelopes, roofs, and really what addresses the actual energy output of the building. So our goal is to create long-term relationships. When we enter into performance contract with the school, a lot of times those energy savings are 15, 20 years of saving guarantees that we provide. So we can't just go in there, do a project and then leave, because if they don't hit their energy savings on year 3, then technically we're obligated to come and fix it, either give them their money back or get their building back on track to meet their energy savings. So what we're doing in our process is we're identifying all of the options. So we're doing a complete analysis of a building. We're looking at what does it look like if they stay on fossil fuels? What if they move to like a heat pump, heating and cooling system, a geothermal system? Then what we do is we review all those different options with the owners through what's called a magnitude of cost. So we're using our historical data on pricing for these energy upgrades. We're providing savings as well as working with Efficiency Vermont to come up with rebates. And then we're reviewing all of those options with the owner. So the owner knows that they're getting a fully informed decision when they're picking, say, going with a new boiler or compared to a heat pump system. We want to make sure that they're not just looking at their first year CapEx expenditure, but they're looking at the life cycle cost and what this means 15 years down the road for them. So we review all the options with the owner. We call it kind of our a la carte pricing option. There might be 35, 40 different energy measures at a school. From there, we work with either a board or facilities group to select which measures they want us to move forward with on the design and the procurement. So we work in-house engineers, architects, we design it. We put it out to bid to local contractors, we procure the work, so we actually are subcontracting it out. We can work on an open book pricing structure with our clients. Ultimately, we provide the site management, so we act as the construction manager on the process, and then we commission the project, so we actually do the energy and building automation improvements to make sure that we're meeting the savings. And then, like I said, it's an ongoing relationship. So a lot of times what's happening is we'll work, say with Pinkerton Academy in New Hampshire, they have 35 million in deferred maintenance. They're doing about $2 to $3 million a year in energy upgrades, and it's a stepped approach to get them there. So I just kind of want to run through some of the options and analysis that we provide, and then kind of running into a quick case study with Vermont Academy on a project, one that I'm working on right now, as well as a completed one for Addison Northwest with some pretty significant savings. So a lot of times, like I was mentioning, what is the fuel source? Like, how is this building going to be heated into the future? Are we talking oil, propane, biomass, geothermal, electric? So the first initial analysis is really where that energy source is coming from. And then really kind of looking at the infrastructure. So do you stay on steam? Do you convert to hot water? There's a lot of downstream infrastructure inside of the school that really needs to a lot of time make a decision on not only what your equipment is that's providing the energy source, but how that works with what we call the terminal unit. So your radiation inside of your classroom, your unit ventilators. And then really a lot of it is how far do we go with these energy upgrades? A lot of times The needs and the code requirements of the space are far beyond what the energy improvements can actually pay for in the school. So really, a lot of times it's an analysis of, we want to do the full thing. We only have money for, this first upfront approach. How do we go out, acquire more grants or acquire additional funding or financing so that we can bite off a bigger portion for the district? So LED lighting, building automation, code, capital needs, and then really trying to create a phased approach. And then this is at Franklin Elementary School. We did a boiler upgrade there a few years ago. They were burning about 20,000 gallons of oil a year. That was at one point paying about $3.50 a gallon a couple of years ago. So they were upwards of 60 grand plus of oil. They're down. We put these two LP high efficient boilers in, a new building automation system, replaced their pumps, and they're burning about 70,000 gallons of LP. So they went from about a $60,000 fuel expense down to about $15,000 fuel expense a couple years. So, and that cost really had a lot to do with oil prices really skyrocketing over the last few years, and it stayed consistently higher than propane pricing. And then just getting competitive buyouts by doing a district-wide LP purchase.
And Mr. Lafayette, just for your planning, we had about 145.
Okay, so I'm gonna cruise. All right. I'm gonna run through a quick existing situation. I know it's not a public school, but it's one I'm working with right now. It's Vermont Academy. Vermont Academy had these two honking steam boilers in the middle of their campus. It distributes steam throughout all these other sub buildings on site. Each one of those sub buildings has this steam to hot water heat exchanger that looks very similar to this nice piece of equipment right here. That's about from 1970. That is very similar. You see this steam heat exchanger all over the state. I'm actually going to be ripping one out at the Marion Cross School in Norwich this coming summer that has an original steam infrastructure from 1960. So in this situation, they have a mix of different buildings. Some buildings utilize the district steam, some have their own heating systems. Either way, they're burning about 80,000 gallons of oil a year to utilize these two steam boilers that then distribute the high temp hot or the steam to the different buildings around the campus. And really what we were tasked to do is what is the best long-term plan for somebody like this? They have all these needs. They have a bunch of different buildings and varying types of condition. Do you stay on steam? Do you switch from an oil boiler over to a biomass or a wood chip boiler? Do you go from a central plant to a lot of distributed smaller heat plants? So those are really kind of a lot of the different analysis or situations that are at play. A lot of times the easiest situation is that has the most cost return is not the one that you want to do. So the easiest thing would be like, hey, let's just get rid of the oil boiler. We'll bring in a new wood chip boiler, and there's huge paybacks and low initial costs, but you're not addressing any of the actual infrastructure issues that are built. All the steam distribution throughout the campus is still outdated, still needs to be updated. Option number two could have been adding the biomass and updating the distribution system, more upfront cost, but greater annual fuel savings. And then really option three and option four are a mix of adding biomass, getting rid of the central distribution plant, moving to LP rather than biomass. And really what we were trying to do is look at not only the initial upfront cost, the annual savings, but how is this infrastructure that we're putting into place, how is it going to jive with what's coming around the corner for heat pump technology in that next phase of life cycle for the buildings. And then we work with a schedule. So, obviously on any project, it's not a project until you have a scope of work, a budget, and a schedule. Those are three things that I'm trying to clarify with everybody up front. If you can't really figure out what your goals are or what your scope of work is, it's really tough to create a project. And if you don't really know a timeline or where the money's coming from, you're kind of just spinning your wheels. So really a lot of the times when I'm working with customers, it's really kind of developing those three things. Like, what are we trying to do with this project? Is this a truly energy reduced CO2? Is this like, hey, this is a major infrastructure issue. If this piece of equipment fails, it's going to shut down the school for a period of time? Or is it three, we have end of life equipment and we really want to be proactive in our planning and provide these options so that when that boiler does fail, we're not being reactive and just replacing it with another steam boiler. We know what that next phase in that building life cycle is going to be. it comes back to this energy matrix. So what we do is we create this energy matrix that has all these different options. So sometimes option one is just the biomass with steam boiler, it costs 1.8 million, annual savings of 150,000, and anticipated rebates from Efficiency Vermont of 100,000. So a lot of times we're working through a lot of these different energy cost measure matrices. This is that a la carte pricing that I was talking to you about, where they pick which measures they want us to develop based off of our initial capital expenditures.
So how do our refunds or benefits that Efficiency Vermont produces compare with the work you've done in New Hampshire and other states?
They vary. So I mean, the tough thing is typically in New Hampshire, it's a very set rate on return. So they go, if you save this X amount of kilowatt hours, then you get X amount of return in it. Whereas Vermont is typically a custom program on most of the school districts. So you don't really know what you're gonna get up front. You send all the information, it goes into some machine, and then they spit out what you get. So
Thank you, and then Senator.
My only question, Eric, was given the short amount of time, this is really great. Are you gonna have time to speak specifically to our bigger school construction aid
yes,
bill and program? Okay, great.
right here. I'm gonna be really quick.
And how and your thoughts on like the Rhode Island model and stuff like that.
So
And before you do that, Senator Williams, please.
It's just I know the Global Warming Solution Act has certain goals that the state of Vermont has to meet. So are you, as you do these new projects for schools, have you got that in mind as far as, I think they have to be like net zero, carbon zero or something by a certain year, I'm not sure of the
yeah,
goals. So you guys are tuned into that?
we are. Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of different, a lot of times what we're doing is we're working, there's the Paris Agreement that, 30% reduction by 2035, there's state of Vermont agreements. And then a lot of times there's even more stringent local ones. So City of Burlington has their own, initiative of their energy program. So a lot of times what we are doing is kind of like, hey, like this is your options, and just FYI, the state and the city have all said that they want to move towards this. These options don't move you towards that. We don't make the decisions, we just.
So the school construction committee actually took all that into consideration as they were.
Yeah,
forward.
we did, yeah. He was on the committee.
I was on the committee,
Yeah.
yep. So just in regards for what I'm looking for in regards to this act is performance contracting being eligible for school construction aid. So if the district wants to receive state aid for a specific infrastructure improvement, it should be part of the financing mix.
Right, can we just slow down? I want to make sure I'm understanding that. Okay. So the district wants to receive state aid for, that should be part of the financing mix, okay, as opposed to not going to the district for. I just want to make sure I understand what this is saying.
So what I would say is that it goes back to how the delivery methods are provided. So in the Rhode Island method, in order to receive aid, you have to hire an architect, and then the architect creates essentially the program and the list of the things to do. And then they take that and they either go to a CM, which is a construction manager, they put it out to bid for CM services, or it's through what's called plan and spec, where it's a hard bid based exactly on what's on this plans and specification. In a performance contracting method, you actually, we compete on our services through what's called an energy service contract. So there's an initial RFP process through energy services. And then we go through and we identify all the different measures for energy performance. And then we create essentially a financing mix, which is usually, Efficiency Vermont money, grant money, and could be some capital funds included with it, or it could even potentially be some bond funds included with it. So in that case, if it's a bond, then we work with them and they go out to vote on their bond vote. And what we would be asking for is that that if we went through that whole process, created the investment grade audit, got all the way down, that essentially we could still apply for that school construction aid, but not necessarily going through like an architect through one of the other delivery methods.
Okay.
Are you all set?
I think so, and does the Rhode Island model, inherently leave performance contracting out completely?
It does.
It does.
And it's interesting because Mass has a pretty big arm of performance contracting through it.
Yeah.
But also, it is done a little bit through their state school construction aid. Whereas in the Rhode Island market, one of the issues that I see is that everything has to go to an architect. So if a school wanted to do strictly infrastructure improvements, say like boiler replacements, controls or lighting.
Yep.
Then they still, in Rhode Island, they're still required to pay that 8% architecture fee for those services. Whereas a lot of those services for us are carried in-house. We don't charge for those services until they agree to a contract. And we can help them both pricing.
Thank you for clarifying that. I didn't fully understand that until right now. Thank you.
I know, and that's why I wanted to get into like delivery methods, because it is one of the Rhode Island model. It seems like we do work in Rhode Island. We have some business, but it is, they're very focused on architecture and creating kind of these modern places. And just one of the things that I've heard from business managers is that it is tough when schools want to focus solely on infrastructure to have to go down that delivery method.
Right, so thank you.
And just to clarify, so looking for, these are things that, who's looking for? You're looking for, or the school is looking for these items?
So the energy use index,
Yeah.
that's something that we usually develop with when we're working with a school, but one of the
Right.
first steps that we do is how does this school compare from an energy use?
The company will be looking for as it contemplates taking on a contract?
Correct, yeah, so what I would ask is, is twofold, is that, one, I think that there should be an energy aspect to the school construction aid, which I think has been slightly overlooked in that, there's schools being required to track their usage of energy, whether, it's electricity and, it's not uncommon for a school to really get off track, whether it's a new facilities director that comes in and all of a sudden you have 25% increases in your utility bills. Well, the actual function of the school hasn't changed. That's not uncommon. So if schools were required to track their energy use, and then that energy use was somehow built into the matrix of how you prioritize school construction. And then just in general, that my one last push is, I know it sounds like there's some newer and fewer stuff, but in regards to like climate change and energy, there's a huge benefit to renovating spaces rather than building new. And a lot of it is just in that, that carbon buildup. Concrete is a very intensive process for carbon production. And then renovation costs, a lot of times you're roughly $400 a square foot, and new construction is in that $650, $700 a square foot. So there's a lot of benefits to really looking at doing energy upgrades at schools, reusing existing schools, and performance contracting is, in my opinion, a really phenomenal way for schools to really get a big overarching look of how their schools are running and performing and what some of the issues are without having to spend a ton of capital money upfront and getting that analysis. With the idea that would then become a long-term partner through the use and maintenance of their schools, which I think it becomes even more important with HVAC systems become a little bit more technical with their building automation systems. And then we have a workforce out there that a declining workforce. So a common theme is a facilities director that has been the man behind the curtain at a school for 30 years. And they are what I call their own DDC system. They run around the school, they turn all the valves, they open up the windows, and it's like, wow, the school's worked amazing. It's never an issue. And then they retire after 25 years. And within a year, that school just, like, that one guy that had all the institutional knowledge goes, and you got away with it for a lot of years.
Castleton University.
Really? That's right.
And it's a common, it's all over the state, and they hide a good facilities director can hide a lot of deficiencies in the building. So. It's not good.
Wondering if you have presented to natural resources, presented natural resources at all? Only because they do a lot of work around energy, and I'm just thinking more, we're thinking about school construction. It just seems like maybe we should not partner with them necessarily, but speak to them and
It's a good idea.
work on energy efficiencies as we look at this big project?
Only thing I had was they hung me up on an Act 250 permit for a biomass boiler, but
We're not gonna.
I pushed it
involve
through.
that.
We got it through.
Oh, come
We
there.
got it through.
But, yeah, that would, just something for us to think about, maybe, yeah.
Well, we might ask Peter Sterling to come in. He works with that committee a lot on energy efficient things. So I wasn't thinking that before Senator Keeler mentioned it. There you go.
So this is just something I'll throw out, has anybody ever looked at? You know, we typically do things because we've always done that way. Maybe the difference in cost of energy efficiency if we did our schools during the summer months. Or the warmer months of the year and just maintain the buildings throughout the cold season.
Oh, teach
I'm talking about-
summer months.
I'm talking about, you know, saving, you know, maybe cheaper to use geothermal to cool, like the heat pumps.
Yeah.
Are a lot easier to keep a building cooler with more efficient than they are to keep them warm in the winter time. I think, I just wonder if anybody had ever looked at that. I mean, it's a paradigm shift for sure. I
Yeah.
know there'd be a lot of pushback on it.
Yes.
I would say that in general, that a lot of your capital expenditures of moving, so most of your schools in the state do not have air conditioning, which has been a big issue, especially now that those first like 2 weeks of September, we seem to always have a heat wave.
Yes.
And there's very specific requirements on, you know, especially pre-K, I think it's like 80 degrees is the max temperature.
Hmm.
And pretty much all of these schools, if you have any type of south-facing windows, by 1 o'clock, you're exceeding those levels. So I mean, a lot of times, like, the biggest cost expenditure in our schools is updating their ventilation improvements. So in general, I would say that if we did it, it'd be you might be saving some heating bills, but you'd be really that CapEx of adding AC would not be super productive to say.
It is interesting because I'll tell you this, Bennington College, when it opened, it had students leave for 7 weeks in the winter. And everybody thinks, oh, great idea. Students went out to do field work terms, internships. But it really had to do with safety. It was during the war and.
I mean, 80,000 gallons of fuel.
Right.
For a school.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
unimaginable. I just couldn't get my mind.
Senator Keeler.
I just was gonna, I think you know this already, but when we tried to go to more of a year-round calendar a few years back, the parents were very.
Oh, I know. That's what
Yeah,
I'm looking.
yeah.
I get it. It's like, you wanna really solve the problem with CO2.
Yeah.
You get people away from wanting to have their own personal vehicle to go back and forth to work.
Right.
And use mass transit. And,
Yeah.
you know, everybody that I talked to in Senate Natural Resources, the head goes north and south when we say that, but it's because we, you know, it's just such a paradigm shift.
Huge. Senator Sheehan.
I thought we were wrapping up. I just have a very unimportant comment. I think we actually we may have crossed paths at Roger Williams. We both attended at the same time. It was,
Oh, really?
yeah.
What year did you graduate?
No, I went there for a year and then transferred, but 07. So
Oh, okay. Yeah, I definitely would have been there. Started out at Syracuse and transferred into Roger Williams. So
Small world.
That's a thumbs up.
Small world.
He's on.
is it? I don't know. He didn't graduate. He said he was just there for 1 year. It sounds like a negative experience.
yeah, yeah, it was too close to the parents' house. So I had to
He's a Rhode Island,
go a little
Ah,
further away.
yes.
Into
Yeah.
Florida, but-
or by birth.
So this is where the whole Rhode Island model comes from over here.
Yeah. It's all good.
Thank you, Mr. Lafayette.
Thank you guys
Very
very much.
helpful, appreciate it. Feel free to follow our work. We've got more of this that we're taking up today, and then we've got a chunk of it tomorrow with Thursday with a bunch of people coming in, but I think I don't want to speak too soon, but I think this generally feeling pretty good about this bill.
Cool.
And in the state that it's in, large part of it because of the work that many of you did on the summer to prepare us for it. So thank you.
I'm happy to stay involved if you guys need anybody else. I am working with
That's great to know.
10 different SUs around the state in all different pockets. It's very interesting, being from a city and then, then going to a lot of these small towns and seeing everything from, the 30-person schoolhouse to the, the 1,500 person high school. So
Well, and thank you for your interest. It's clearly making a difference. You're talking about that kind of reduction in fossil fuel use.
Oh, yeah, and I missed one. I mean, Addison, this was one of our first ones, 2017, Addison Northwest Supervisory Union. You can see that in July, we started implementing it over the summertime. So your gray and orange lines are month-to-month comparison. So July is really when a lot of the efficiency started taking place. August, you can see some big changes there. September wasn't much, and then we get it back into track. It takes a while to dial in building performance and operation.
Yeah.
But then you're looking, we've reduced their energy consumption district-wide by 40%.
That's awesome.
And when you give the facilities people, that's over $200,000 a year in annual savings. And if you give the people the tools and the training, the energy savings are possible.
And they had natural gas.
They had natural
We don't.
gas.
The southern counties, it stopped a little bit.
It's true, natural gas, but there's other things, other fuel switching and performance things that can also give some great savings as well. So,
Thank you.
thank you guys.
Good to see you.
Appreciate it.
We will wait for Rep.